It's super dark in here. Perfect for a after lunch snooze. It's okay. I won't notice. My name is Felix, as Pavel already said, and I'm from a company called Broken Rules. And today I'm gonna talk about. It's basically a postmortem of our latest game called Old Man's Journey. I'm not going to talk about the art of Old Man's Journey because Clemens will do that after my talk. So I'll focus on design, development, funding, also a bit of PR and stuff like that. But yeah, first let me give you a little bit of an introduction. So this game is by a company called Broken Rules. Broken Rules is based in Vienna, Austria, and it's founded by these 5 gentlemen. These are the co-founders of the company. It's Felix, Clemens, Jan, Peter, and Martin. You will meet me and Clemens today, which is something we've never had, actually, like 2 talks at the same conference. We feel very honored about that. The company started with a game called And Yet It Moves that was launched in 2009 and made by 3 people of Broken Rules, Felix, me, Jan, and Peter. And then we had Clemens and Martin join the company. You can see it on the bouncing heads. And with all the 5 of us, we made 2 games. One is called Chasing Aurora. It was a Wii U launch title. And the second is Secrets of Raticon, which was on PC again, a single-player action-adventure game. After these games, we restructured the company a bit, and me and Clemens started up with a new idea, with a vision for a new game. At the end, Jan also worked with us, and Martin invested it, so it's still kind of a Broken Rules game, but the vision keepers are definitely Clemens and me. And this game is Old Man's Journey. So now I can ask Pavel's question. Who of you know Old Man's Journey? Pavel knows. Okay, so a bunch of you don't know it, so I will quickly show you a trailer of the game so everybody kind of knows what kind of game I'm going to talk today. It's a premium mobile game and it looks like this, and it also sounds really beautiful, so I'll turn up the volume. It's a story game with puzzles inside, and it's very much about the experience of traveling with this old man. And while traveling, you will get to know his life story, told through memories. We launched it on iOS, Google Play, and Steam. Its prime target is the mobile sphere, though, which is also, I'll talk about that later anyway. And it launched in May 2017, so it's been out for about half a year now. And now I'm also going to start showing off a little bit because the game won a few awards. One of it was the Apple Design Award shortly after launch in June 2017. It was also nominated for Excellence in Visual Art at IGF. It didn't win, but it was nominated, which was an honor already. And lots of more showcases, also awards or nominations. So on that sphere, it was definitely a critical success for us, but it was also a financial success. So on its launch day, it got featured on the App Store. This is still the old App Store. And it got an editor's choice, which was very nice to have. Sadly, the Apple design team changed our banner a bit, so we can't really look at this picture very long. But it was also featured on the Google Play Store, and I really like how it sits between Call of Duty Heroes and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I also want to give you a quick look on the sales since May 2017. These numbers are from iOS, Google Play, and Steam combined, but they're missing Asian markets. We have a partner for China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Japan, so these numbers are missing in there. So it got downloaded 132,000 times. These numbers are from like a few days ago, basically. And you can see the spikes. Obviously, the first is the launch spike. The second was the featuring during the Apple Design Award or after winning the Apple Design Award. And as you can also see, the Steam numbers don't compare much to the iOS, so the Steam summer sale only was this small bump in the middle. Now, only recently, the past few months, we've got a few today's stories on iOS 11 App Store, and these also got us some small bumps. But most of it is from the launch period, the launch phase. And I don't have the Chinese numbers in there because they're from a partner, but the game launched about 2 weeks, 3 weeks after in China, so it launched with the Apple Design Awards spike, and in June it sold 35,000 copies in China, and then in July 8,000. That's what I have from the Asian market. So it was successful for us, but while in the concept phase, basically, while talking about it, we defined a financial success threshold for us. Clemens and I did. And basically, we decided to call this project successful if we're able to fund a game like this with the money we make with Old Man's Journey. So it would mean we need around 300,000 euros for us from the game. Until now, we've received about 360,000 euros, but not all of this is for us. We've had investors in the game. We need to repay them. We had some bills that we had to pay. We had bonuses to go out, and obviously money for ongoing optimizations and other updates and stuff like that. So in the end, we're right now at around 180,000 euros for us. So it's not yet a success, but I think it's on the way for us to actually reach that financial success threshold. Good. Now you know the numbers. Now you can all fall asleep or go somewhere else if you want. Or you can also keep following the talk. Now I'm going to start. I wanted to basically first give all of you an impression of what the game is, but also how it performed. So now I'm going to go back into the past and talk about how it all started and how we developed the game. So funny enough, it started with Yet It Moves Again, which we ported to iOS in 2014 with a Japanese company called DNA. So basically, they paid us to port our own game to iOS, which was really nice. But sadly, they also already pulled the game from the App Store again. One point because it didn't perform as they wanted, but also because it doesn't support 64 bits, so we had to move it on. And after we did Yet It Moves for iOS, for DNA, they asked us if we want to pitch them a new game, an original game. So we started thinking about new stuff. And as always, we did some brainstorming sessions, which in my opinion, are a valuable tool to get the creative juices going. But in the end, I don't think I've ever had this idea that then turns into a game during a brainstorming session. It usually happens at some other times. So during these brainstorming sessions, we were talking about doing a 2D game with layers and where you switch layers, so kind of going into the depth, and it would be interesting, but nothing really specific came from that. But these things lingered on in my brain, so I think most of these design ideas happen from your subconscious. We've heard a lot about subconscious already today from Jonathan Blow, but I also think that it's really often the subconscious that does the design work for us, in a sense. Well, it's also us, right? My subconscious is also me, so it's also kind of me. This is Salvador Dali, and he had this. Do you know the sleep trick of Salvador Dali? Anyone knows his creative sleep trick? Only one. So I'll give a short a description. Basically, what he did is he also believed that he was the most creative when his subconscious did the work, or when he was in this kind of dreamlike sleep state. So what he did is, after lunch, so right now that would be a good time, he sat on this very comfortable armchair and fall asleep, because that's what you do if you just ate and it's that time of day. But he took a metal key in his hand, and I think he put a metal plate below his hand. So as soon as he would fall asleep, he would lose the grip on the key would fall down, make a loud noise, and he would be startled up and be awake again, but in this kind of dreamlike state. And that's when he said he was the most creative. So just a little story about how you can trick yourself to get into this creative subconscious state. So for me, it was at some friend's place. I saw a picture, kind of like a traditional, a classic, or I don't know, and it's a well-known photograph. It wasn't this photograph, but it looked like this, like hills fading into the distance. And the brainstorming sessions before and everything kind of came together, and I thought, these are layers. It would be interesting to shape them on a touch device. We were always talking about a touch device, obviously, because DNA wanted a premium iOS or Android game. So we were thinking about touch interactions. And it would be nice if you could shape these hills, if they would form intersections, and you have a character that wanders into the distance here. And this idea, together with Clemens, we worked with this core gameplay idea and talked about it, and tried to find out what we want to do with it. And we talked about the character mostly as well, but I'll do about that later. So, and then we took this further, and we thought, what game do we want to make? Which is an important question for everyone, I guess. If you start a new game, it's like, what game are you going to develop? What game are you going to put a lot of energy and resources of your life into? And there's a lot of possibilities you could do. And we basically took like these constraints for us to decide what game we want to do. So this is loosely based on, I think Derek Yu had it, in the creator of Spelunky, had something like this diagram in his blog. And this is based on this. And it's basically, if you look at all games you could make, there's the games you want to make, and then there's the games you're good at making, the blue circle, and then there's the games that have a potential market in the current situation. This changes, obviously. And obviously, you want to make a game that sits right there in the middle at the intersection of that. And that's what we tried to do, and we saw the potential from this gameplay idea that this could actually work. So we really wanted to make a game that we care about, a game that is inspired by our personal life and that connects to people all over the world. And this also comes from the fact that our past two games, Chasing Aurora and Secrets of Reticon, weren't that successful, neither financial nor critical. So we knew that developing a game is a high-risk endeavor, and making money from it is even more risky. So we wanted at least something that we really care about, that connects with us. So that was a starting point for sure. And because we had to pitch the game to DNA, we had to think very early on what's the game really about. And this is actually from the our first pitch document that we sent to DNA. And a lot of these constraints that we defined there are something that we stuck to through all of the development phase. Very important constraints we also had are inspired by a game called Monument Valley, which you all know, and by Ken Wong's design talk from GDC. I think it's 2 or 3 years ago. It's a great design talk, and we took a lot of these constraints that they used for Monument Valley for our game as well. So from the start we said we want a short game, 90 minutes playtime. We want it short because we want it to be very polished, and we want it to be always fresh and new in what you play. And we want a small team, so we won't be able to make it longer. And what's also really important is that from the beginning on we said it's more about the experience. The experience is what matters more than the gameplay. We used other tools, so not only inspired by Ken Wong, but we also used the game, this book. Who of you knows this book? Some people. Did you read it as well? A few less. It's a good book. I also didn't read all of it, but it's also a book that you can read like only some chapters of. And we used some of the lenses that Jesse Shell defines to help us in the design phase of Old Man's Journey. We used specifically these 4 lenses. So the first lens about emotion, we turned this into our own emotional progression curve, which I will talk about later. The essential experience, the unification, and thinking about the player. So for us, the main group that we wanted to make this game for is basically us, or people like us. I think most games I made are usually for people like me, in a sense. But so that means Jesse Shell calls these people in peak family formation. Sounds really strange, but basically it means it's like you start building a family, and you start settling down, you have a job, and so on and so on. So these people are like grown-ups between 25 to 40 people who don't have much time left to play games. They still want to play games, but they want to play focused, emotional, touching experiences, basically. But yeah, so another lens was the essential experience, and we talked a lot about it, but because the core gameplay, which was very much about wandering into this distance, it was important to have a character that needs to go somewhere. The photograph that I saw evoked a strong vibe of wanderlust, and that's something we wanted to have in there, traveling. So the essential experience really is a slow road trip. And because we wanted it to be personal, we wanted it to be about family. So since 2009, Broken Rules has had 8 kids and only 4 games. So you can see that family and kids are something that was important for our lives. And the topic of balancing family life and our passion, which is making games, in some ways you could say your indie studio is a kid of your own, right? It feels like something you have to care of. So every one of Broken Rules had this bit of conflict between family life and making games. So this is something we wanted to have in there as a unification, as the theme of the game. What's the reason behind making this game? The reason is to talk about these balancing issues. Oh yeah, I already talked about the players. So, and also important, it's also a lens from Jesse Shell's book, is if you think about where will your game be played. And we think, or we always thought, that the place where you play Old Man's Journey is on the reading nook, and not on the, an alternative place would be the workbench, I think he calls it, or the living room. I think he calls it the fireplace or something like that. But for us, it's definitely the reading nook. And the reading nook is a special place for games, I think. I think it's also a new place for games. It's something where you take your small handheld with you, right? It's something where you take your tablet with you, and you used to read your book there, and you take your time, you settle down, you grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine if you prefer, and you're ready for a slow and intimate experience, and you're ready to feel something. And that's it. Like, people go there to feel something, not to live out power fantasies. And that's what Old Man's Journey is about. It's about the emotions and something that you can very well experience in the reading nook. So these were like the design and concept phase of Old Man's Journey. And now I'm going to talk a little bit more business stuff, how to get money for it, how to pitch the game. And instead of fighting this pitching phase, which is something I think a lot of game developers don't really like, that phase, because it means you have to sell your concept to someone. But we really try to embrace this phase and use it to focus our design. We pitched Old Man's Journey to a few things. So first, DNA. They actually said no. They didn't want another premium game. They wanted some free-to-play thing, so we said no. But we liked the idea of Old Man's Journey, the concept already, so much that we wanted to continue it. So we started pitching at a local event called the Live Pitch, which we won, which was a small step into more confidence and motivation into this product. Then we pitched it to Indie Fund, and then to a public grant of Vienna called Wirtschaftsagentur. In English, it's actually Vienna Business Agency. And another public grant, which we didn't get. So in the end, we ended up with a public grant from the city of Vienna called the Vienna Business Agency. And we ended up with 150,000 euros. Well, we didn't get it at once. The way it works is that you get 50% of the money up front, so when you start the product, and the last half you get at the end of the product, which means you have to be able to shift money around a little bit. And we've got money from Indie Fund. Anyone does not know what Indie Fund is, or who Indie Fund is? Yeah, well, yeah, I think some people. So Indie Fund, basically, it's a collection of investors who are game developers. So these are game developers that made money with their indie games, and instead of putting their money on the bank and not get any money back from it, they invested into games because there you have a better return rate and they know stuff about it. And this collection, some people of this collection invested money into Old Man's Journey. Public grants, yeah, we are in Europe. I can leave this slide in because we are in Europe. And I think public grants are an option that we as European developers should keep an eye on, because it's something that, like, the North American developers don't really have as much. Well, the Canadians do, but especially the US people from US don't. And we don't have like this big angel investor scene like they do, so public grants are something that we can use, and we should use, if you have them. Can we trust ourselves? So why did we choose these two forms? So the public grant is something we got for our past games already. It's a funding way that we're comfortable with, that we know how it works. But the investors was definitely a new thing for us. And the reasoning behind pitching to Indie Fund was the money, obviously, and the deal, but it was also to get someone outside the game who believes in the vision. So Clemens and I were a bit burned by developing two games that weren't that successful, so we lost our trust in ourselves a bit. So we said, no, we like the vision, we believe in it, but we wanted some external green lighting for it. So yes, we can't trust us, but we can trust someone else. So we didn't want any external partner to be our greenlight process. We wanted the Indie Fund specifically because these are people we trust and that know stuff about games. And if there's a game developer, an expert that you believe in, and he's ready to take his own private money and put it into your hands to create a game, that's pretty much the biggest form of trust that you can get. So we also said, if we are not going to get Indie Fund, we are going to kill it. kill the project and not develop it. So luckily enough, we got the money from the investors. We did have to help out a little bit as well, but in the end we got it, and we used this as a filter to really trust our own vision as well. One big part of getting the indie fund is networking, I'd say. So this is Jan from Broken Rules, and he's wearing our badges of the last, I don't know, I think it's since 2007, basically, all the conferences we went to. And this collection grows and grows. It will get this beautiful Churchill lanyard very soon, which is cool. But basically, it's like, we've often asked ourselves, is it worth it to invest so much money to travel to the States or to Tokyo, or even just to Prague or somewhere else, invest your time and your money? And it's always hard to put like a direct benefit on it. But I can tell you that it pays off in the long run. So all the investors that invested into Old Man's Journey, we knew personally. No, not all of them. I think one we didn't knew personally, but all the others we knew. So it was really important. It was basically people we hang out at a conference 7 years ago were then in a state where they had money to give, and they knew us and trusted us as the team. This is the Indie Fund deal. I already shortly talked about the public grant deal, but it's the deal from the investors. They give you the money up front. There's no question asked. You don't need to send them anything. Actually, I tried sending them 1 or 2 mails at the beginning of the process, like just to keep them up to date, but nobody replied. So I thought, like, I think they don't want to hear anything from it. So they give you the money, and then when the game launches, they recoup all the money. So they get all the money from the sales until they recouped 100% of the investment. Once this happened, they still get 25% until either they doubled their investment or 2 years have passed. Simple conditions. I think they're fair. They were definitely fair for Old Man's Journey, but obviously they cost something after you launch the game. You can also just take the money and run if you want. So there's no real thing about that, but obviously if you do that, you will lose all credibility in the scene, so that's not a good idea to do. For Indie Fund, we also made a playable prototype, our first playable prototype, because it's very important. So for the other pitches, we only had concepts, basically, but Indie Fund wanted a playable prototype to see how the core mechanic works. And that's how it looked like. I think it was, I forgot what time it was. And this puzzle is pretty much one-to-one in the final game. Whoever played it probably recognizes it. So in the end, I think we got the creative project, which is the public grant. I think we got it because they knew us and they knew we built something with the money. But they also got it because they had experts that know something about games tell them that this game is interesting. So our investors basically were the experts we needed for the public grant to show them that this is a game to invest in. And why did we get the investment? Because they knew us and they trusted the team, but also because someone else was sharing the financial risk, which was the public grant. So basically, we told the investors we want to get the public grant, and they said, if you get the public grant, then you get the investment. So we had this circular dependency where the investors want the grant to give us money, and the grant says, well, we've got experts on the board that give you money, so they trust you. But who takes the first step? Well, it worked out for us just through a letter of recommendation from the investors that we showed the public grant. But basically, this was a circular dependency that made us get the money from 2 separate sources. Okay, so much about money. So once we had the money, we could start developing. And we develop our games loosely based on this method by Mark Czerny, which basically says there's a pre-production phase where we have the concept, which we did before, but where you produce something called the vertical slice, which is 1 or 2 levels in production quality. And once you've done that, you start into the real production, where we create a horizontal game layer. So in the vertical slice, we create 2 levels, like a small subset of the game in publishable quality. And then in the horizontal game layer, we try to create all of the game without any real assets in there, basically just the gameplay. And we also start PR and marketing parallel to it. So this is based on the Mark Journey method, but not really. It's kind of an extension of it. And obviously, after we have the whole horizontal game layer, we start building all the assets and all the game. We needed to build a team as well. And for Old Man's Journey, we decided to basically just pay them money and not do any rev share. Clemens and I wanted to have clear responsibility in all the decisions. Again, this is something that a decision we made because of our experience of our first 2 games. And the experience of our first 2 games is that we had too many people able to do decisions, able to make design decisions, because all of them are invested in it. So we wanted to have clear financial roles, or clear roles and clear responsibilities, and we wanted to make this also clear through the financial situation, is that we pay everyone, we take all the risk, but at the end we also get the rev share. I will probably, for our next project, I will definitely rethink this approach, but I think for Old Man's Journey it's something that worked. Yeah, we also talked about a bonus, which was pre-negotiated at the start. And the main reason of this bonus was that because we didn't get all the money of the public fund at the start, we had to pay our team a little bit from their chunk at the end once we get the money from the public grant. In the core team was 6 people at Old Man's Journey. Only 3 of them were full-time. The others were part-time, working through all of the production phase. And next to these 6 people that were the core team, we also had like 5 people helping out. Sometimes more, sometimes not. Like not through all of the production time, but just for some specific times, like a PR strategy at the end, obviously, and stuff like that. So in total 11 people, but not all of them full-time. And we managed this team. So some of these were local in Vienna, some of these were remote. And to plan the team, like it's still a small team, right? And the core people like Clemens, me and Jan, we have already worked together, so we know how to work together. So we really try to have a very flat and easy hierarchy. And one tool that we used as an overview planning is just to have all of the, so I also did some of the project management. I did, yeah. I tried to plan all of the production in chunks of 2 weeks, because these are our sprints. And I tried to plan very rough the tasks per department that should be done. And I planned this originally I thought I'll do it for all of the development, but obviously that didn't really work out. But at least I had certain milestones already planned for the end as well. And then as we moved ahead, I always tried to have like 4 to 8 weeks planned ahead in rough tasks. And each chunk, once a new sprint started, we took the tasks and made them more specific. And we used Trello as this. So this is based on Scrum. It's like a Scrum board, but it's very loosely based on Scrum. So we have a lot of adaptions. And that's also what I think is like, don't just, like I'm showing you this not so that you take it and do it the same way, but you can use it as inspiration or whatever. I think every team needs its own planning and you need to adapt your tools to it. So we used Trello for our board where we had specific tasks for the next 2 weeks and then tasks move along from left to right. I think you probably know all of this. And we didn't have a Scrum Master in that sense. Like I was kind of the Scrum Master, but basically everybody kept his board updated, and we didn't have Scrum meetings or something like that. Sometimes we had video chat meetings, but not really every month. Like initially we planned to do it every month. I think in the end, we didn't really do those anymore because our communication worked through just the overview and the other things. And for team communication, we used Slack, which probably most of you people know. So basically, important, immediate things that need immediate attention were talked about in Slack. Things that can be pushed away for a day or two were communicated through Trello, and all the rest through a sprint overview. So these are the tools we used, and basically we worked from like totally the whole, including concept phase and post-update thing. We started working in September 2014. But as you can see on this graph, so the below lines are how much we worked. So you can definitely see there's a chunk in the middle where we did most of the work, which is the production. And in the beginning, it's a stretched concept phase that we use to define our ideas and also to pitch the game and get money for it. So internally, we tracked all our hours with a tool called letsfreckle.com. Obviously, not all of the freelancers use this tool, so for the outsourced work, I had to estimate stuff. But I think, so this is my estimation of how many hours we put into Old Man's Journey. And as you can see, the biggest chunk is during the production phase. But so for concept and pitching, it took Clemens and me about 645 hours to get to the state where we had the funding. And then it took us about 10,800 hours to produce the game with all everyone involved, so the internal people, also the outsourced people. It sums up to about 7.5 person years. So 1 person year is 1 person working full time for 1 year. But obviously we stretched it over 3 years. And what we also did with our tracking internally of our tracked hours is that we tagged them to certain areas, aspects. So this graph is taken from data that all internal people tracked. And as you can see, most of our work went into, oh no, it's not only the internal people, sorry, wrong. It's also estimated from the freelancers. So you can see most of the work most of the work went into visuals, then into technical stuff. And I'm also proud that I made more than 10% for PR, because I usually never, usually we had invested less time into PR, but this time, which I think is something, if you want to do a commercial project, it is good to invest a lot of time into PR, and I think 10% is about the benchmark that you should at least put into there. We had 13%, which is good. So in total, it cost around 300,000 euros, which is something I already said before, I think. Yes, so all the numbers and crunching is behind us. I can talk a little bit about the design decisions and design aspects of the game. As I said before, at the beginning, there was this picture, and this picture had a strong vibe of Wanderlust, evoked a strong Wanderlust, which in German is called Fernweh, which you can translate to the pain of wanting to be somewhere else, basically. And this is a core emotion that we wanted to transport through the game, which is also the core emotion why this character is actually traveling. So as I already said before, the idea started with the game mechanic, but then talking with Clemens about it, we knew we had to focus on the character and to think of why is this person, why does he have this wanderlust? Where does he need to be? Why does he have to go somewhere? And from that, the narrative emerged. Basically, the character and the narrative emerged. So we knew this guy wants to be somewhere because there was a problem with his family and he wants to reconcile with his family. And from this narrative, we extracted the emotional progression that we want people to experience over the game. So we defined the life story of the old man with key moments, with his memories. And at the beginning, those were quite a lot, actually. And that's, I think, the first draft that we had of the story. So this is like his lifeline, and the gray things are his memories, like how he met his future wife, and then she got pregnant, and he did a motorcycle chase, and so on. And behind there, you can see a pink line, which we mapped along these memories is like, are these, like to say it simply, it's like, are these good memories or bad memories, right? So if it's above the black line, it's a good memory, and the more it's above, the more happy, and then it goes below to sad memories. And that's like the emotional progression that the old man feels when rethinking his life story, but also the one that we want our players to feel. And this is inspired by Flower. You all know Flower, I'm sure, of that game company, and they had a similar emotional curve mapped along the levels. So below you see all the levels of flowers, and that's the curve that they want the players, the emotional intensity they want the player to feel. And I really like this curve, so I wanted to use it as well. And we call this the emotional progression curve. And we took it away from the original draft and then had this document which followed us all through development of Old Man's Journey. And it defines what we want the players to, well, it's basically what the old man feels when thinking about his memories, but it's also what we want the players to feel. So this already gives a strong link between player and character. And as we want the players to feel empathy for the character, this was really important. So let's take a closer look at it. As you can see, there's this positive-negative axis again, and so basically the blue line just says, is this a happy or a sad memory? But we also wanted to have more specific memories on there. So we wrote some more specific emotions along this line that we want people to feel like. And I'm closer here again. I don't know why I'm closer here again. Let's see what next comes. And on top of the diagram, you can see the memories. So on the top of the diagram, these are the memories that players will have at the end of each level. And these obviously define also the emotional progression curve, but these are also the end points of each level. And the levels are at the bottom of the curve, so each line is one of the levels. And this is a snapshot from in between, so some of these levels weren't defined yet, but we basically wrote down the puzzles that we want in there before, and once we had a real level, we gave him names like subconscious or watermill and stuff like that. So this emotional progression curve was, I think, the single most important design tool that we had in Old Man's Journey, and it allowed us to have clear design decisions, but it also gave us the power to parallel work with a remote team, because everybody, even if the level wasn't even close to finish or wasn't even started yet, everybody knew what emotional goal we have for this level. So our composer, for example, could already make music that transports certain emotional intensity without ever seeing the level it will be in there, and then we can make it together and everybody works toward the same goal, which is what will the player feel. And we also used this curve, we printed it out and hang it up on the walls, and then we used it to map our puzzles to this curve as well, which I will talk about the puzzles anyway now. So we wanted these puzzles to not be super brain-twisting, challenging puzzles, but we wanted them to be interesting enough. And we wanted them to be part of the landscape, but we also wanted them to be part of the emotional progression curve. So they had to have some connection with the progression curve as well. And our level design flow was the way that we prototyped individual puzzles, and then we tested them. And these individual puzzles started out as kind of like sketches, bad sketches and doodles on paper. And once we kind of liked the idea, we started building them in Unity with very rough prototype art, which we already had from our pitching phase. And we could use those to play test with people because the gameplay definitely worked with them. We had a few ideas there that never made it into a game. And as you can see, we really used very rough graphics. This dog is barking now, as you can see, because we wanted those prototypes to be as cheap as possible, but still able to learn, still able to show to people and let people test it. This was an idea that we had kids follow the old man around the level. Never made it into the game. So we tested those, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. So we could filter them out. And once we knew which puzzles we want to have, we could combine them to landscapes, and we could map them along our emotional progression to see where do they fit, like do they support the emotion as well that we want to convey. So this is not only about the difficulty curve, but it's really also emotional curve that we want players to feel. And once we've decided that which individual puzzles will go at what level, we try to build all of them together into one big landscape. Now I think Clemens will talk more about that anyway, but in a sense, we made the sketch again on paper where we had the individual puzzles together in a landscape that works and that is believable, and then we build it in Unity again. We could test it again, does it still work, does it not work? And only once we had these things down and built, we started decorating the game. And Clemens will talk about this soon, but basically he made screenshots of each part because we had fixed camera views. We knew which part of the landscape will have what camera view. These are the yellow rectangles around. And then he could start drawing over it and building it together in Photoshop, and then taking the small parts and put it into Unity and build a level out of it. But Clemens will talk more about the art. I will just quickly go a little bit into the narrative design. And I already see I won't be able to make it to the PR process, I'm sorry. But I think the narrative design is more important anyway. So Salon Alpine is a company in Austria and Portugal, and they focus on visual storytelling. So they do work for advertisement and other clients, illustrations, but definitely also animations and stuff. And they helped us focus and filter the story. Because we decided to tell the story without any words, we needed someone who's good with telling stories with pictures, and those two are really great at that. And they helped us taking these initial story that we had and focus it. As you can see, there's a lot of memories on there, and we had to cut some of those out. We had more, and we also only initially had the idea that the old man at some point breaks away from his family. There's the breakup. And then he goes on a self-discovery trip. But we never knew what this would be. Like, what is it that drives him away from his family? And Salon Alpine came, or Lip Comarella especially, came with the idea that he has to be a sailor, because a sailor is a stereotype that just works. If you see a sailor, a picture of a sailor looking at the sea, then you immediately have the passion for him to be out at the sea. It's a stereotype that works without much explanation. So if we put it into a picture, everybody who knows the stereotype knows that he has a passion somewhere else and that he needs to go somewhere. And that's something that I personally probably would have never used because I'm a bit afraid of stereotypes, but it's something that really works well in our story. And we also had more ideas of memories that we had to cut out because they were too complicated. We had more ideas of memories that showed the happy time of the old man with his family, because I thought, I don't just want him to be this angry guy that walks away. I want him to also show him as a caring parent. But all these pictures were too many. They weren't really needed. If we just show this one memory, everybody knows he was a caring parent. So we could ditch 2 or 3 memories of our initial plan and just show one picture that shows him with his daughter happy along. This one is a great sketch that also never made it into the game, sadly, but it's really nice. So what we also did, we didn't only play test the levels, but we also took the memories and we tested them separately from the game. So we just took these sketches, the storyboard that we had, and we showed it to total strangers and see if they understood the story, but also how do they feel about it. What we learned through this test is this is not a story for teenagers. Most teenagers came back and said, well, this guy is just a jerk. He just runs away from his family, then he comes back and whatever. Like, I don't feel any empathy for him. But as soon as we talked with older people, we noticed that they, or from their own life experience, they know that not all decisions that you make in life are easy, and they know that not all decisions you make in life are good, so they had more empathy for the old man and his life design decisions. So are there any questions?
Hi, so my question is, well, I already asked this in previous speech, somebody. What framework did you use, why, and if you developed your own, why? Okay,
we used Unity as a game engine. The main reason is because we had a team with only 2 programmers. Well, actually only 1.5 programmers, and none of them are really hardcore programmers. So our 2 games before we did with our own in-house engine, because we had a lot of engineers on the team and strong engineers. But for Old Man's Journey, I knew engineering will not be our strength, so we decided to go with Unity. Unity is at a good stance, and it worked well for us. But a lot of our solutions were pretty hacky and workaroundy, because our focus on the team side was on something else. And we also used a lot of assets from the asset store, so that was also a decision why we used Unity, is because there's assets because there's problems have been solved by someone else already, and we could just pull that solution in there and work around it. Obviously, it's often a bit hacky, and sometimes it makes it also hard to work with, but that's just something we had to go for because of our team's structure.
I have a question about PR.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, that's my question. So tell me more about PR.
Okay, quickly, in very quick, one slide maybe shows it all. Let's see. Our PR idea was basically something we've done always is we try to build awareness from our own core, and this is what this kind of shows, is we do certain stuff to build awareness for our game. And we did this while developing already. So at the core there's broken rules, and we have a small bubble of friends, and the decision to use Indie Fund was a PR decision as well, because Indie Fund can multiply our own reach. And we went to GDC 2016 to show the game to selected journalists and to selected store editors, but also to developer colleagues. We wanted the awareness of Old Man's Journey grow from a scene of developers and a few journalists and store editors to grow up to audience. Obviously, it was very important for us to meet store editors of the App Store and Google Play, so I think we met 4 times. We showed the game 4 times to Apple developer relationship guy. Actually, the first time we showed them a prototype was before we actually got the grant, so that's a very important part. And then events. The dark red circles are events we went to and we used to show the game to certain people. We went to 6 events at the end, not only 2, but 6. And basically we tried to build awareness before that it will be easier at launch to get featuring, but also to get reviews and interested things, and also to see if our game has enough interest in the public opinion. Because if if there's no feedback from your trailers you put out there, if there's no feedback from the tweets you put out there, you can be pretty sure that it won't happen at launch as well. So it was also always kind of like testing what works, but also if the game has enough interest. And these events, just a quick one more, is these events, we also use them as milestones for our development. So if we go to PAX to show the game, we need to have a build that it's a certain state. Yeah, so we did it using our own awareness onion, basically.
All right, so if you have some more questions for Felix, please find him after the talk. Now, thank you very much, Felix.
Thank you.